in the heart of the urban jungle, a unique species of Homo sapiens thrives. Identified by their common adornments, the humble hoodie, their peculiar yet endearing rituals involving ping-pong tables, and an astonishing amount of free coffee. The startup Homo sapiens.
I'm no David Attenborough, but I know a thing or two about startups. For example, did you know they don't run on coffee alone?
I'm here to guide you on an extraordinary journey. Our new Twitch series, AWS Let's Build a Startup. Together we shall observe how an idea evolves, grows and matures into a real minimum viable product. All of this within the AWS ecosystem. Whether it's the thirst of knowledge guiding you or simply your passion for free caffeine. Join me on this fascinating journey.
Hey, hello founders. Welcome back to a new episode of AWS Let's Build a Startup. This is a 1-hour show peeking behind the scenes of successful startups from all over the world, building with us at AWS. I am Giuseppe Battista, I'm a startup solutions architect, and I'll be your host for today. And I'm here with Kev. Hey, Kev, how's it going?
Yeah, hey, good to be here. I guess this is what, episode four?
It's episode four. Episode 4.
Yeah. Super awesome to be here. Just like Giuseppe, I'm also a solutions architect at AWS. And excited to have people from what we've got, Twitch, YouTube, LinkedIn today. So welcome. Feel free to put in the chat where you're from. I see we got someone from Washington, which is pretty early in the morning for them. So thank you for joining.
That's real commitment. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we stream the show every week at Tuesday, 2 p.m. London time, 6 a.m. Pacific time, which is where Pirat9 is signing in from. And I think last week we had, a couple hundred people to join. So thanks everyone for joining again.
Yeah, absolutely. We're about a couple of hundreds as well today. So please, folks, float us with your questions. We have a very special episode built up for today. So we do have an interesting lineup for the next few weeks as well. So, on this show, we host founders of very interesting startups. For example, we have Julien Simon from Marcy in a few months, I guess. In a few weeks, we'll have the product team at Lovable. This is a fantastic episode in which we'll also have our chief evangelist, Jeff Barr. And again, I'm bringing him at 6 a.m. In the morning in his time zone. So please to come here. That's an incredible chance to ask him interesting questions on, where Gen AI will take us, or how are we doing with vibe coding? What are we building? So please do let us know what your questions are. But I think enough with all of the housekeeping. I wanted to bring on to stage the guest for today. We have Jacob from Depot.dev. He's the CEO and co-founders. And folks, as per usual, if you have any questions, please do let us know through the various chat boxes on LinkedIn, YouTube, and of course, Twitch. Hey, Jacob, how's it going? Thank you so much for joining us today.
Going well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, Jacob, I wanted to have you on the show because you're building something that is loved and cherished across so many developers, and I would love to share the love here on Let's Build a Startup. But before we get into that, I just wanted to ask you a question about how did you get the idea, where in your entrepreneurial journey or in your your work journey you kind of find out.
Should we start with what Depot.dev is first? I feel like people should probably know what that is before we understand the journey to get there. So Jacob, can you give us the TLDR on what Depot builds and what you're doing?
Nice. Yeah, so we are in the build acceleration space. So we want to make software builds faster. And that can either be like a software build that you're running on your local machine as an engineer, or you could think about CI/CD tests, builds, deploys, all of that. We do that with kind of the group of remote execution, remote caching, and observability to kind of make builds as fast as they can possibly be. So yeah, we started Depot, my co-founder and I, about 3 years ago. Both of us worked as platform engineers, very familiar with the problem that we were facing. Specifically at the time, we were focusing on container builds. So we had in our day jobs container builds that we were optimizing that were taking 40 plus minutes to build. existing CI providers, and we were very much aware of like if we built something that was actually intended to do this quickly, that would be much better. So yeah, our original prototype, original product launch was, can we make container builds faster?
So as a developer, I kind of cherished that build time where I could like go, grab a drink or grab like a coffee or something, but you're getting rid of that for me. But I mean, it still seems like a good thing though, of course.
Yeah, it kind of, you can keep the flow state, which I enjoy quite a lot. You do miss the coffee breaks a little bit, but yeah.
That's right. You just got to plan ahead. And now, yeah, I mean, the fact that that is not as much of an issue and you can iterate more quickly and keep that flow state, that's fantastic. I mean, there's nothing worse than losing your flow state.
And this is extremely important for startups, right? So you can validate your production cycle, so much quicker. So thank you really for starting building that. To the detriment of our coffee. I don't know why we always end up talking about coffee on the show. Maybe I should change the video intro. I don't know, but Jacob, I think enough chit chat. Show us some code. Show us something that we can grind our teeth in.
Cool. Yeah, and let me, I'll share my screen here.
Yeah, you go.
Cool. So over the last 3 years, we have expanded a bit from containers. So we're going to start with containers here in this demo, but actually expand to GitHub Actions as a whole. I have this repo here. This is a copy of the source code for Traffic, which if you're not familiar is an open source like application proxy routing system. And yeah, I have the code here, and it's building a container image and running some unit tests. So kind of like simulating a real world app, you could say. So I have a very basic Docker file here that's building the like traffic binary and then copying it into a final release stage. And then let's see, I also have a build workflow that's building that image. This is going to look very familiar if you have built containers in GitHub Actions. And we'll come to unit tests in a minute, but I also have a unit test workflow here. So the way that Depot works, we integrate with different build tools. So you could think of like Docker as one of our integrations. We have an integration with GitHub Actions, as well as like specialized build tools like Bazel or Gradle or Turbo Repo. And we try to make it so that like you can use your existing workflow, your existing way of building software, but connected to Depot to make it go faster. Stop me if you have any questions here, but I will keep on going.
So where in these build files is Depot's secret magic sauce that's happening? I see one reference to Depot at the very bottom of this, but otherwise I don't think I saw anything.
Yeah, so that is what we're going to add actually. So this one is building just in GitHub Actions, just with Docker. So Docker is like building the container, but inside the CI runner. So I think I can go to one of those CI runs. Yeah. So it's building the container here locally, which is fine, but we're going to accelerate this with Depot. So I have already made an account. If you want to sign up for an account, you can without a credit card. We have a trial, but yeah. And we have a few different things you can do here. One is container builds. That's what we'll start with. Or CI runners. We also have some caching we can talk about later. I'm going to start with container builds here. And specifically, I'm going to build with GitHub Actions. So in this case, I'm going to fill in some basic information for authentication purposes. So this is Depot.dev.org, and the repo was traffic. Yeah, cool. Okay. And then there's some example YAML here, but I'm just going to copy that and that. Nice. And then we're going to edit this file. So what we're doing here is, again, we have different ways of getting the container build into our system. But we try to make it very easy. So we have a CLI called the Depot CLI. that has a build command that accepts the same flags as Docker. So if this had been using Docker directly, I could have replaced a Docker build command with a Depot build command. In this case, I'm using an action, GitHub action called Docker build push action. I'm actually just going to instead use a Depot build push action. And I'm going to copy that out. Yeah, and that's kind of it. So I've swapped out the Docker build push action with the Depot build push action. I've the only like additional thing here is a project. So we're going to build with a project. We can talk about that, what that means in a minute, but I'm going to commit this and let it run. Cool. And go here.
So you said this works with all sorts of build things, and I saw on the user interface for Depot, I saw Bitbucket, Jenkins, Travis. Did I see Circle as well?
Exactly.
All the main ones that people are going to be using. Okay, but we're just demoing GitHub Actions right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Kind of anywhere you could run a Docker build, you can run a Depot build. So whether that's on your local machine or a CI provider, or people even like script this to build containers as part of their own platform, like anything that interacts with the Docker build, Depot build.
Yeah. And I saw that your APIs are basically Docker compatible. So the swap is
Exactly.
okay, instead of doing Docker run or Docker build. Docker build obviously is going to be Depot build, and it will respect all of the requests from Docker.
Exactly. Yep. Try to be like as ecosystem compatible as we can be. Yeah, so this build has completed. Unlike the previous build, though, we should see a line at the very top of this that says launching a machine. And we have something interesting going on here, actually. So ordinarily, when you ran the Docker build, you'd be running like the build in the CI runner. In this case, the Depot build is actually moving that build into servers inside AWS. It's doing a bunch of behind-the-scenes optimization of the build, as well as caching. But one interesting thing that's going on here is there's actually an AMD 64 Intel machine and an ARM 64 Graviton machine. In this case, I've requested, like, I want both of those platforms, right? Like, I may be pushing to a Graviton machine for production, but I may have developers with Intel workstations, right? And so I want to build this image for both. I can go here to view this build in RUI as well. But yeah, so that build was kind of like moved off to those remote servers, built in parallel, and then merged back together.
And compared to the GitHub Actions version of the build, was this one faster? Is that the benefit in this use case of using Depot?
Yeah, that's a good question. So faster is definitely one thing. Faster in this case, this build took about 30 seconds. The previous build took about a minute, so we're about twice as fast. This is obviously a rather small container, but those sorts of things compound over time, right? So like bigger projects have slower build times. A very important part of the Depot architecture, though, is caching. So in this case, like, we persist all of the cache that comes out of this particular build in like a content addressed way. So like if these files are the input and this build is the result, then that is saved. That is sort of like natively available to all the next builds. So what this means is, like, unlike CI where you're used to like every runner is ephemeral, it starts from scratch. Maybe it copies some cache from like object storage somewhere, but like that's an explicit step that takes time. In this case, a Depot build is incremental. So if your build takes an hour, not only might it take 30 minutes on Depot on the first run, but like when you edit a file, the next build is incremental. So maybe it's building only the last layer in 5 seconds, right? Instead of that full hour rebuild. Yeah,
that kind of mimics, I guess, like local development. Like when I know when I'm using Docker locally and I make a change to just my source code, none of the packages change. It's usually really, really quick. But again, if you're doing this in a cloud environment, like you said, there's no caching. So it's okay, that makes sense. That's cool.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So I am actually going to edit the GitHub Actions workflow for the unit test next. This is our UI just while we're here for viewing what happened in the build, which is very similar to the logs output, but has additional detail where I can like go in and like inspect. There's not going to be a lot of information here yet, but inspect some like historical build performance metrics, layer sizes, kind of the observability side of things. But I'm going to edit a different YAML file, which is actually going to show the caching and the GitHub Actions integration. So in addition to container build optimization, we can actually optimize the entire workflow. Yes, to that question, ARM64 is faster and cheaper than AMD64, which is one of the cool bits of having access to Graviton here.
Hey, schizophrenic developer, thank you for that question. And in general, yes, Graviton, it's based on ARM. It also has some advantages from a carbon footprint perspective. So that's also something that if you're keen to minimize, that's an easy swap on some kind of workloads. So thank you so much.
Cool. Okay. This here is a workflow that does some unit tests, which I copied from Traffic's repo. So it is figuring out what to test, running some Go unit tests, as well as some front-end unit tests. Yeah, so 3 years ago, we started working on container image builds. We learned through that process that the things we're doing to make container image builds fast can apply to different builds, which is why we have different integrations with CI providers and build tools. GitHub Actions is one of those. So this workflow at the moment is running just on the GitHub Actions public hosted infrastructure. But I can actually redirect this to machines running in Depot by changing the label. So I've already connected my GitHub organization with this Depot account. And then it's just a matter of changing where this job runs. So in this case, I'm saying I want to run with the same Ubuntu latest image, just on Depot. And similarly, that will move this build from running in that public infrastructure to running in Amazon in an EC2 instance that is optimized for making the compute fast, making the cache fast, integrating with all of our different observability tools. I can do this kind of a thing, like I just want to move the build to Depot, but I can also do more fun things like ARM for speed and cost. And I'm going to give it 4 CPUs because I would like more compute for these tests to finish faster. I'm going to do the same for this one.
So if you just throw more compute at the build, is it going to automatic? Like, I know not all applications can leverage more compute. So have you optimized this for leveraging more compute, or how does that work?
That's a really good question. So in this case, let's say we're building a Go project, right? So the Go compiler is aware of CPUs and able to multi-thread. Okay. So this should directly speed up this build. If we're talking about like a Node.js script, we're just running the Node.js script, right? That is limited to 1 CPU. So throwing more CPUs isn't necessarily going to make the build faster. More CPUs do come with more RAM, so that could also have something to do with that. However, in our UI, so I'm going to go back over here and go look at the GitHub Actions that are running. Yeah. In our UI, we actually monitor CPU and memory usage. So unlike in GitHub where you can't like see what resources are actually being used, I can over here. And in this case, we are actually, this is a front-end test. So it is Node, but there are more than one process. There's more than one node process going on. So we are actually able to use the additional CPUs, as we can see here. But this kind of a view can give you a pretty good understanding of like, oh, I'm maxing the CPU or memory of this particular job. I should give it more CPUs, or I shouldn't. Like this is, like I've made it larger, but it's not actually using all of the resources. So things like that.
Yeah. And there was a question coming from Nick Hill on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for that. And I guess we're trying to give an answer to it right now as well. So like apart from build time, what other key metrics do you track to measure Depot API?
Yeah, so build time is one. We also have some understanding of time saved. And cache performance. So you could think of like if you're tracking over time a build that took 5 minutes and that produced a cache output, and then later that cache output can be reused, like you've saved 5 minutes in that build. So you can kind of track that cache hit rate performance over time, things like pass fail rate of particular jobs. In the Docker case, we can do this like on a step level. So we can say like, oh, this run step that built your app, like how did that perform over time? So yeah, I think things like that kind of fall under that observability umbrella of things.
Then we got another question from Phrase. So I'm going to interpret this and ask the question because I'm not exactly sure what they're asking about for what type of data you can store, but the way I interpret it is how much can you cache in one of these build processes? Like, so if I'm building once, how many of these build images and caches can I store at once?
Yep, that's a good question. From an architecture standpoint, we're building on top of AWS, and so we're using technologies like S3. So in the case of, say, a GitHub Actions CI workflow, GitHub actually has a limitation of 10 gigabytes per repo. It's just something that they've decided to set on their end. We don't have that limitation. Like as much as you would like to save, we will send those objects to S3. So no limitation there. On the container build side, similarly, we have built some distributed caching cluster systems on top of EC2, but they also auto scale. So there's no like technical limitation, if that makes sense, to storage.
I feel like that leads really nicely into Phrase's next question. Giuseppe and Jacob, are we ready to go into architecture, or is there more of this demo here we should talk about first?
I think the only thing I have here, I'm just going to open the last container build, and we'll see some of these cached lines. So in this case, I have changed a YAML file to move us to running the actions on Depot instead of on GitHub. But the container build has been able to reuse a significant number of the layers involved because like the container Docker file is the same. So you kind of get to see the caching in action there. But yeah,
very cool.
Dive into things.
Yeah, so I guess Phrase's second question here, it's quite long, but so in terms of the scalability and cost optimization, you were talking about it in terms of the S3 storage instead of, you know, what GitHub Action does of presumably volume storage. So that's one scalability. I guess then just in general, should we jump into the architecture and then we can talk more about the tenancy, regions, region design, serverless, et cetera. Then we can really dive into everything you were asking, Phrase.
Yeah, I think that sounds good to me.
Sounds great. Thank you. And folks, again, if you have any further questions across YouTube, LinkedIn, or Twitch, just let us know. We'll try to bring the one that feels more relevant.
Yeah, so I guess, how do we want to go through an overview of the architecture? What should we start with? What do you think makes a difference, Jacob?
Yeah. So all of this is built on AWS. We do have to consider different things, as mentioned, in terms of scalability, isolation of workloads, security, like just general performance of the system. So yeah, our overall architecture is a whole lot of EC2. So we're moving these builds from where they ran before, whether that's on your machine or in a CI runner or whatever, into the cloud. And when they do that, they are moved to an EC2 instance. This is not the only way to run something in the cloud, like there are containers. But in our case, we have chosen like each build, or in the case of a container build, each project server is its own EC2 instance that is only used for that customer in that build. This is like a performance thing in that that build now has full access to a full EC2 instance to perform its build as quickly as possible. But it's also like a security isolation thing of if that build is malicious and is able to like somehow escape the container that we've put it in, we don't want it to have any access to anything from any other customer. And that can kind of apply, like in our case, we're hosting something multi-tenant, right? But that can also apply internally if you don't want like a build on an open source repo if yours able to access your internal repositories. So yeah, I mean, on the compute side, EC2 instances, we've done optimizations in the runner to accelerate things like file I/O. So CI does quite a lot of file operations, downloading things from the internet, saving them, unpacking them, building, like all of that. So we do some things with like all the way down at the disk level to cache like blocks of disks that are read and written in memory before they hit the actual EBS disk, to increase the IOPS and throughput that are available to CI. And then caching. Like caching is a very big deal. The like work you can skip in a build is the fastest thing, if you're able to reuse a previous build. So we have various levels of like APIs that integrate with specific build tools or specific caching API, like public APIs. Content is saved to S3, as I mentioned, or we have a pool of EC2 instances with local SSD storage. We do fun tricks to make that fast. Like if something saves something to the cache, we turn that into multi-part uploads that all happen in parallel. All sorts of like optimize every level effectively.
I like what you, so the thing you mentioned of caching and then not having to do something speeds up the most, because you've got a really interesting article about speeding up the boot time of EC2 instances. And one of the things that stuck out from that article that you said, the header says faster boot times. One thread became common. Not doing something is always faster than doing something. I love that phrase. It's so good. And it really just is exactly what it is you're trying to do here with so much of this caching. And yeah, it articulates it perfectly what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk more about EC2 boot time too. That also gets into like performance versus cost trade-off. So since I mentioned like we use an EC2 instance for every build, that means like every GitHub Actions job is a new EC2 instance that's never been used before and is destroyed after it's done, which puts a whole lot of pressure on the number of EC2 instances that are flowing through the system, right? And the time it takes like to get that instance ready to process the job is visible to the customer. Like that is the queue time for the job. If I push a job and it takes 1 minute for that job to start, maybe that's okay, but like that's a minute of time delay. And as workflows get more complicated with matrix builds or multiple steps, like those delays start multiplying. So anyways, we put a lot of effort into how do we get an EC2 instance ready to run the job as fast as possible. If you're thinking about how you might solve this, like one solution is to keep EC2 instances online all the time, right? So like just have a pool of instances ready to start jobs. But like now this is every combination of operating system and every instance size, and also Intel and Graviton, and whatever, like we're talking a large number of possible combinations. And it's just like expensive wasted compute sitting there, not running jobs. So to get the performance that we want and also get the like cost efficiency that we want, we actually have a system of booting EC2 instances as quickly as possible. A technical detail that is documented, but we had to learn, is that when an EC2 instance starts, it streams its AMI content from S3. And that is actually the thing that contributes the most to the start time of an EC2 instance, is that like initial setup of the instance.
And why would streaming in this case be slow? Like what makes that bad for what you're trying to do?
Yeah. So the images that we run are compatible with GitHub. So the like AMI contains the same software. So like if you have a GitHub Actions workflow that runs in GitHub, we want it to be able to run on Depot without modification. That image itself is 80 gigabytes of actual content of every compiler toolchain of every language under the sun. Even separately from this, the latency is the thing that like kills the initial boot performance. So as blocks are read by the operating system, those blocks are fetched from S3 and written to the EBS volume. And so we're talking some number of tens or hundreds of milliseconds of latency for that block access. And those things sort of stack up. So just the kernel starting up, systemd starting up, services booting, whatever. You're looking at like 30 to 60 seconds of time just for that initial population of the disk, which usually is fine because like whatever, it's 30 seconds. But if you have millions of these things coming online and you want something faster than 30 to 60 seconds, that's where you get into like some of the optimizations.
So I'm gonna change directions here for a little bit. We've talked about many different optimizations that you've made in Depot to make builds faster. With the caching is fantastic on that. From like a business perspective, so you're the co-founder of Depot, so you're certainly thinking about this as a business, not just as an engineer who's doing individual tasks. How did you decide which of these to focus on? Like, where did you see the most business value early on? So like starting, you mentioned earlier, you and your co-founder saw this pain point. You're like, we want to start solving it. How did you actually get from where you are or from where you started to today? And how do you prioritize these differences? Because I feel like as an engineer, I'd be like, I just want to solve all of them to help everyone, but you have to start small sometimes, right?
Yeah. I think the thing that, I think two things have worked for us. One, the original problem that we're tackling, we were our own users. And so we like understood that there was a problem to be solved. The thing that I think made that work from a business side is we said, okay, let's build like a proof of concept that we can let somebody use, and let's ask them to pay money for it. Because if it's actually solving their problem, they will actually pay money for it. And if not, they won't.
Right, the basics.
Yes. So we actually launched like a private beta after a few months of like building the prototype, but with like Stripe connected to accept payment. And so part of the initial validation of the idea and why we like decided to go full-time on this and all of that was like people were like, yes, I want that and I will pay for it. I think the other thing that works, I mean, even the original idea comes from this to some extent, and our continuous process is like we are constantly talking to our users and hearing what they are doing, what problems they're facing. So like the expansion from container builds into other build tools was directly driven by people saying like, I like the container thing, it is working, but like, here are the other things that I am currently like, I want what you have over there and I want it over here.
Yeah, having a close relationship with your customers to learn these things is so important. And yeah, I love that that's the way you went about it.
Yes. Yeah, I think that plus like ship things, get feedback, like the sort of iteration loop, that is what makes this whole thing work.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got a question here from Ladarib. I'm so sorry that I probably poorly pronounced that. You mentioned earlier that there's a free tier, and I believe you said you don't need a credit card for it, but can you just tell everyone again how the free tier does work?
Yeah, so we don't have a free tier. We do have a free trial. So you can try out Depot for 7 days. You don't need a credit card to do that. You can just sign up. It is a timed trial. But yeah, you can just sign up and try out things.
Very nice. And then,
sorry, Kev. I guess the next question would be like, how does your actual business model actually work? What's the pricing, and how can a startup actually making use of your services? what kind of advice do you have on that?
Yeah, so we have 2 or 3 different plans depending on how you're looking at it, but effectively like usage-based pricing. There is a $20 a month plan for individuals that includes just a certain amount of build time. There's also a $200 a month plan for teams or startups or companies of any size, really, that again includes some amount of build time and storage of cache. And then it's just a pay-as-you-go per minute kind of thing after that. Yeah, for all of our, similar to Amazon, we track like usage in small increments. So compute time in seconds and bill for the number of minutes used. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
No, of course.
Sign up and build
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, and that's gonna save you a lot of. I think what I would say to a founder is that this is going to save you development cycle time, which is notoriously potentially one of the largest expenses that you have when you're actually trying to get to market as quickly as possible. So I guess that by optimizing that, that'd be I think a natural step into savings. And maybe talking about savings. So I guess that you guys are potentially making use of economies of scale. Is there any tips or trick that you can teach us?
Yeah, like in how we have implemented Depot on our side.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we probably look like a reasonably vanilla Amazon optimization thing of like figure out your compute patterns, set up savings plans to cover your instance usage, all of that. I think an important thing to us, there are different ways to do startups and different business strategies. An important thing to us has always been that like if you pay us for something, that is a profitable exchange. Like you build a build, you pay us for it. We pay our costs, and we're not like subsidizing something, which I think we think of this as like a sustainability thing. Like we want to be there to serve, to solve your problem and not like disappear because we mismanaged, I don't know, the financial side of this business. So yeah, I think we pay a lot of attention to like, are we being performant for customers and efficient on our costs? And then are we pricing in a way that makes that a long-term sustainable thing?
Well, that makes a ton of sense, and thanks for sharing. I'm thinking now in terms of your experience as a founder. So, is this your first attempt? Have you built something before? Like, what was I guess your path into entrepreneurship? This is something that really interests me.
Yeah, so I'm a first-time founder. I have been very interested in startups and worked at a lot of startups through my career. So I've always sort of had the interest to start something myself. I think I've also particularly loved the like intersection of like software engineering and product and business of like, I want to build something for somebody that solves their problem and then like hear from them how it's going and iterate on that. So even like working at startups previously, I would like try to be more connected to the different aspects of say business or marketing or whatever that like are going on within the startup, because I think like having all of that context is where like the best result comes from. So yes, this is the first time I am learning a whole lot, which was kind of the idea, both to do the thing that I like doing, just in a more full form of it, but also like learn new challenges around all of the things that come from actually starting a startup. So
yeah. And I'm thinking of all of the new founders and folks that may be approaching. So you folks are built on top of your experience. So you noticed a gap, a significant gap in the market. But what kind of piece of advice that you might have for young entrepreneurs or somebody who's we are sitting on I think on the edge of unprecedented times when it comes to for builders, right? So we have unlocked new technologies that are speeding up the amount of code that we can write per second. And this is potentially going to change the landscape of entrepreneurship. And I really wanted to piggyback on your experience as an entrepreneur and like sharing some tips and tricks for all of the folks that might be interested in building their first startup or their next startup.
Yeah, I think so. I've already kind of touched on this. I think the advice that I would give, I don't know, what's worked for us, at least I would say, is you really don't know if something is the right thing until you give it to somebody and they actually demonstrate that it solves their problem. So like we originally were somewhat of our own customers, but there was that element of like, yes, this solves my like annoyance as a developer, but like, will a business actually view this as valuable and pay for it? And so part of our initial validation of that was like to charge money for it, which is does it truly solve the problem? Like an idea is an idea, but will somebody actually pay for it? And then on the flip side, like the thing that you give someone is probably not the right solution the first time, right? It's not like the perfect thing. So being like very willing to operate on a short like feedback loop of like, here's the thing, collect the feedback, like very quickly implement the feedback, give the feedback back to the person, like that loop, and the speed of it, I think, is what makes startups work, as opposed to like rabbit holing down one particular solution that isn't actually
So I guess that choosing your design partners as well is like a skill that you develop with the experience. I don't know if you have any tips on that as well, like or like how you guys started scouting your first potential customers or design partners. And by the way, design partners, what I mean is that somebody who is willing to share some of the pain with you while you're building the product and iterating really quickly. We do that within AWS. I think a lot of times when we are providing access to new features and stuff like that, and customers are generally really understanding of the fact that, hey, we are building this. It's gonna take a while, but once we release it, it's going, it's something that it's going to solve a lot of your problems. So I don't know if you have developed some sort of framework or something that that helps you identify or like cut through the noise.
Yeah, I think on the two halves of that, one, you need people to actually try the thing in the first place. So just like finding people to try things out and get feedback from is one half of that. I think there are also different ways to do this. The thing that worked for us is like content marketing. Like very, very early on, we were writing blog posts and attempting to distribute them on Reddit and Hacker News and all of that. Because like we knew, like we had people in our network to try things out, but we wanted like the broader public to know that we existed and like come in the door to try it and give us feedback. And then once they had done that, then we could talk with them via email or on calls or whatever about their experience. But like from 3 years ago, we were writing blog posts, and credit to my co-founder who has a lot of experience doing that and did all of that a lot over the past 3 years. So I think
touched on something really interesting there. So one, you said Hacker News, so that's Y Combinator. And the Y Combinator's advice, you've touched on two of the main points for startups. One, which is build something people want, which was step number one of what you were doing. And then the second one, I guess I didn't mean to thumbs up, but it just happened. And the second one is, finding the right design partners and candidly being not afraid to say, like, actually, you're not moving in the direction that we think is best. So maybe you don't end up working with that design partner, but finding the right one, so important, or many in your case. But yeah, finding that following, getting the content out there is really important.
Yeah, I think we've also like at least I've seen in previous places, like startup that an enterprise comes in the door and says, I will give you, millions of dollars in 3 years if you develop custom things for me. And then the startup dies before the enterprise contract is closed. So I think we also very much prioritize, like, let's talk to the wider community of people and like kind of aggregate the pain that people are actually experiencing as a group and not like build a custom feature for one person. So that's kind of the, like, after you have gotten people to give you feedback, now you kind of, and it helps that we're like users of our own product, so we can kind of like resonate with the feedback that we're getting. But yeah,
you don't want the enterprises to sink you because you think that they're going to be that huge contract. Again, I'm going to keep reiterating on this. That's another one of the startup suggestions that they give, Y Combinator being them. Yeah,
if you're a
great
2-person
advice.
startup, you do not have the corporate infrastructure to handle a contract from a Fortune 500 company. So yeah.
And going back to a question that Fraser asked again, Fraser, thank you so much for asking this question. How big is the team at Depot right now? And I know that you folks are looking to grow, so can you comment on that?
Yeah, I think I have a link that I've sent you all that you can share for career stuff. But yeah, we are, I think, 10 or 11 people now. Yeah, we've always tried to do more with less. Like, let's be as efficient as we can be, and then like let's hire when we like know a need in a particular area. So yeah, we've grown a lot over the last year. We're still growing. There are current open jobs, especially in the marketing department, but we are, over the next year going to be hiring people in all sorts of positions.
Yeah, so folks, if you feel like jumping on this challenge, we are sharing a link, I think, right here. Just click on it. That's the career page for Depot, and yeah, just submit your application. Jacob, I think you folks are remote by default, right?
We are. Yeah, so I actually live in London, but we are all over Europe and the US.
Okay, that's fantastic. So I just have another question coming up. I'll just bring it up here. Is there any particular type of workloads that benefits most from using Depot over traditional CI/CD runners? That's a great question. Thank you so much. I'll try to spell your name. Nyarum3. I hope that's cool.
Nice. Yeah, I would say, like, if you're running a workload on GitHub Actions, the goal is that it gets faster when moved to Depot without modification. So anything running in GitHub Actions, I think, would be an easy target for moving something over. There are like some specialized workloads. We see some customers like with specific GPU clusters where they're like needing to send a job to a specific host. We do actually help with some of that. Like, we can deploy the compute plane in somebody else's Amazon account. So there are actually ways to like route Depot to, say, a GPU reservation that you have. But if you're into like extremely complicated CI that is sort of stateful, I guess we could say, then that would be less of the like very scaling option that we are doing.
I feel like you breezed over the fact that you can deploy into customer accounts so quickly there.
Yeah.
That for potentially security and just general compliance purposes, that seems fantastic, as opposed to using GitHub Actions, for example, which is running in their cloud, which, nothing particularly wrong with that. But if you want it in your own environment, that's huge, really.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like heavily regulated environments. So anything that has to go with like finance, like financial services or healthcare, life science, all that sort of things. It's there. It's in your AWS account. Yeah, I think that's a great step towards like security and potentially compliance. The last question I had for you is that you folks have just onboarded into the marketplace, or first, maybe you're more of a veteran in the marketplace. I might be wrong here. Part of APN. Um, do you notice any interesting movements in your customers coming through that avenue, or how does that work? How does the customer acquisition work at Depot?
Yeah. Customer acquisition in general is usually an engineer, say on a platform or DevOps team, or just in general, anyone who's like interested in CI/CD infrastructure, signing up, trying things out, and then like more widely deploying Depot in their company. We are on Marketplace. We've actually been on Marketplace for a little while now. Like we did that fairly early on. I think like maybe in terms of advice for other startups, like Marketplace billing becomes very important the larger the customer is. Many companies that we work with like are on Amazon themselves and care about like the fact that their CI runs in the same Amazon region, and they want like the billing all to be centralized through their billing agreement with Amazon. So yeah, we have a marketplace listing that we use. We use like private offer system, but that has been important for us in terms of like larger companies and larger contracts.
Yeah, that makes sense. I see a lot of my customers actually doing that, and one of the reasons for this is that again, it is easier to get a foot in the door with large companies that maybe have a bureaucratic structure in place to say, okay, you can only sell to me if you go through these kind of hoops and jumps, and like and then it with the marketplace it becomes extremely easier to do that because your bill actually passes through AWS. But folks, thank you so much for staying with us. I just realized we're coming up to the top of the hour. So I wanted to thank you, Jacob, for staying with us. To me, Depot looks like an incredible building platform that will save you precious time on your road to market. Just a few announcements before we go. Next week, always here on Let's Build a Startup on Twitch, LinkedIn, and YouTube, we'll be chatting about how to revolutionize the clinical research with generative AI. We have folks from Syncove and our partner 3GI. So if you're interested in how to orchestrate large GPU workloads, please make sure that you book into your calendar 2 p.m. BST, 6 a.m. PST, and 9 a.m. EST on Tuesday. Tune in and have a look at how we do GPUs at scale. Yeah.
And then the following week, we've got Lovable, Jeff Barr. It'll be another really fun episode. But Jacob, thank you so much for this conversation. It's been fantastic learning about the way you got to where you are too, with all these like incremental but valuable in different way optimizations. It seems like an awesome product. So well done. And yeah, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely. And folks, thank you so much for all of your questions. Please bring them in. And if you have any additional questions, or if you wanted to book a meeting with me or our startup scouting team, we're sharing a link right now in the chat box of all of the platforms that will take you to a calendar where you can book an appointment. And yeah, we'll start chatting about your startup idea. And yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you so much. I also wanted to thank our chat moderation team and our chat squad. So I'm in Carolina, Marco, and Georgie. See you all next week. And go and build. Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.